start your presentation. Dr. Meng.
Great. Thank you very much. I have a brief prepared statement that I'm happy to share after the hearing. So good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present about the Cap and Trade Program, and in particular, the GGRF. My name is Kyle Meng. I'm an associate professor of economics at the Bren School of Environmental Science and Management and in the Department of Economics at UC Santa Barbara. Much of my academic research has been about the effectiveness, efficiency, and equity consequences of climate policies around the world, and in particular here in California. Between August 2023 and just 5 days before Election Day, I served as a senior economist for climate, energy, and environment in the White House Council of Economic Advisors, where I advised President Biden on a whole range of analysis in those domains across many policy areas. My research and my time in the White House has given me a very deep appreciation for what we have here in California, and in particular, the Cap and Trade Program. I see it personally as a world-leading example of what pragmatic, effective, economically sound climate policy can look like. And in fact, it became quite a bit of a habit of mine when I was in the White House when evaluating new policy proposals to ask the question, well, what would a cap and trade like California do in this situation? And then try to reverse engineer a solution from there. So it really, in my mind, is a benchmark for how we should be thinking about climate policy. The Cap and Trade Program has two components. It's got the carbon market, and it's the revenue that comes from selling those permits. Today's focus is on the permit revenue, GGRF. But I think it's also important to highlight that it's the carbon market and the price that it puts on pollution that drives emissions reduction in a cost-effective manner. Spending of that revenue is in many ways a secondary benefit that is separate from the core emissions goal of the cap. So how should that revenue be spent? Again, about half of which goes to the GGRF. As an economist, I believe that the dollars spent should be no different than the dollars spent in the general fund, according to state priorities, whether that could be improving healthcare, expanding public education, investing in housing, or cutting taxes. But as an environmentalist that believes very much in the durability of the Cap and Trade Program, I do think it is important to consider specific spending in environmental and climate priorities, like climate adaptation to address wildfire concerns, or heat exposure, or to address longstanding environmental justice concerns. When it comes to using GGRF to cut emissions, there is an important caveat, which is that the fund should target reductions that aren't already incentivized by the carbon market. Otherwise, the government risks paying for reductions that would have happened.
Excuse me, could you repeat that again? I just didn't hear it.
Yes.
You said when it comes to
When it comes to using GGRF to cut emissions directly, the caveat is that it should prioritize reductions that the carbon market itself would not incentivize. The issue is that otherwise, the government might risk paying for reductions that would have happened anyways. And in my mind, the carbon market would do so in a cheaper manner. There are, however, two clear examples in my mind where you would want to spend GGRF funding to reduce emissions directly. The first is to help promote and deploy kind of new technologies that are quite costly that we really want to bring down the cost curves for. And that, for example, an example like that would be like direct air capture that would not fall under the cap, traditionally under cap and trade, but for which we want to lower the cost for future reasons. The second is when energy prices are actually too high, even accounting for all the damages from climate change and air pollution. In most parts of the country, electricity prices need to rise in order to drive down decarbonization. Unfortunately, that is not the case here in California. Electricity prices here are actually too high, even accounting for all the concerns from climate change and local air pollution, and they're continuing to climb. So importantly, this is not because of cost from cap and trade. The cost of generation has largely been held steady over the last few years, but largely this is because of the added costs that our utilities are paying for distribution, a lot of it for wildfire mitigation and so forth. So this is, I believe, a market failure that needs to be corrected. Too high electricity prices are now a major headwind to California's decarbonization goals, including slowing down the adoption of EVs, heat pumps, and other electric appliances. I believe that permit revenue can be used to lower retail electricity prices. A forthcoming analysis by the Environmental Markets Lab, my research group at UC Santa Barbara, finds that of the $1.2 billion allocated annually through the California Climate Credit, that $1.2 billion could lower retail electricity prices by 20 to 35% for all low-income households served by the 3 major IOUs. If you took that same amount of money and just
Sorry, what was that percentage?
20 to 35%.
35.
If you use that same amount of money and gave it to all households for just the summer months, for which electricity bills are highest because of the need for air conditioning, you could lower electricity prices for all households between 10 to 15%. So in summary, even after a decade in, California's cap and trade program continues to be a climate policy that rises to the challenge. It has helped meet the state's emissions targets and will become even more critical as California pursues more ambitious climate goals that demand cost-effective solutions. The program has generated a substantial revenue stream that can support a range of state priorities, including energy affordability. This rare combination of being able to drive bold climate action while advancing fiscal priorities makes a strong case for the program's reauthorization and affirms its value as a model for climate policy moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We very much appreciate you taking your time and bringing us your expertise in terms of this, and we'll look forward to having you be part of our conversation shortly.